And welcome to the Self-Aware Entrepreneur Show on this Thursday afternoon. And if you're joining us for your lunch, again, thank you for being with us. Now, today, I've got an amazing guest. And, how do I even begin to describe what he's achieved and the mission that he's on? But ultimately, he is a combat veteran. He's been on a number of tours. He has, really been at the extreme edge of performance, the extreme edge of endurance. He's pushed himself beyond boundaries and obstacles. But like everything, the human experience, he's managed to come out of the other side, increasingly aware and now really embrace his internal arts. He runs his own company called Heroic Hearts UK. And ultimately, he's incredibly knowledgeable around the areas of resilience and sensitivity and actually being in touch with the human elements of ourselves. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to dig into his story today and learn about what brought him to do what he does today. And it's an absolute pleasure to introduce Keith to everyone. So thank you, Keith, for joining us.
Thank you, Lee. Thank you. That's very generous of you to say those things. Thank you.
Yeah, and also it's really great that you've taken a bit of time out of your busy schedule to join us on the broadcast today. And what I really want to kind of dig into, first of all, Keith, is what you're currently up to. What does the day-to-day look like at the moment?
Day-to-day is actually really exciting for me at the moment. Some people that may follow me on LinkedIn will see that I was down at the sea this morning. I live near the sea, and I've taken to sea swimming recently. And I've only done it 3 times, but it's been wonderful. It's life-changing, really. It's been great. I never really subscribed to the whole Wim Hof method thing, even though I recognize there's great knowledge there, just for me personally.
Yeah.
But yeah, swimming in the sea has been wonderful. And I actually not been too busy today. I was sat in the sun in my garden, having done a bit of gardening before as well. So today is actually, in the midst of a very busy period, I've actually been relaxing and treating myself with a bit of self-love. But professionally, it's nice to be able to start working after the COVID lockdowns. Professionally, I'm an internal arts instructor. Internal arts is an umbrella term for things like Tai Chi, Qigong, Qigong is a Chinese yoga, for want of a better description, seated meditation, standing meditation practices. So that's nice to be able to start classes again, both private and public. My resiliency clients as well, that's always nice to start reacquainting myself with them. But at the moment, really, my work with Heroic Hearts is really going full tilt, full swing at the moment. So it's very exciting, but it's also incredibly busy. But I've got a fantastic team around me, so it's I'm blessed, and it's very exciting.
Yeah, and that's always one of the kind of the biggest elements of having that support network. But I've got to say, Keith, that is a full sensory experience when you go sea swimming. It definitely lights you up in the morning.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's kind of well known that one of your real specialisms is kind of unpacking resilience, which, as we discussed, and which many of you know, is kind of become a bit of a buzzword in communities, within businesses, within the self-development world, and this idea that human beings can withstand trauma, can withstand challenges and threats, can manage to robustly get through life and bounce back whenever things happen that are against or out of our control. But we've had a number of discussions on this, and obviously what I want to do is just start to dig into your journey from a young age through into your first career, and really kind of help people to start to understand your theories of resilience.
Yeah, so as a young man, I was kind of a bit wayward and a little lost, and perhaps lacking a little bit of self-worth and self-respect. And I, for many different reasons, in addition to that, and certain circumstances in my life, I felt that the military would actually be a great way to experience the world and perhaps develop certain of those aspects that I felt I was lacking, like self-worth, self-respect, but also have an adventure. And I believed in the righteousness of being a soldier, protecting my society. I'm not sure if I feel the same way about that now, but that's what I went into it doing.
Yeah.
And I had a wonderful career, a really wonderful career. I spent nearly 9 years in the parachute regiment. And during that time, I went to Iraq, and I went to Afghanistan as well.
Yeah.
So traveled the world in addition to all of that. But really, Afghanistan was very difficult. It was a real duality, because it's incredibly exciting.
Yeah.
Very exciting. But at the same time, it was profoundly traumatic. Changed my life. Yeah, changed my life. Changed all of our lives who were there. It was the parachute regiment is actually it's a combat unit.
Yeah.
There's no other reason that we sign up for that unit. Everyone that signs up for the parachute regiment just wants to fight. And to put it bluntly, kill bad guys. That's really why we get involved. And in Afghanistan in the summer of 2008, we definitely got that. We got that opportunity. And so prior to Afghanistan, how I perceived myself was that I was capable of anything.
Yeah.
I was very muscular framed. I was in Olympian fitness.
Yeah.
Very strong, very confident. There was, having reflected, there was a bit of a brittle element to that confidence, but I wasn't aware of it at that point in time. So I felt very confident.
Yeah.
And I felt, most importantly for this conversation, I felt that I could endure anything, because we were trained that way. You know, we were really put through our paces in the training, and then our experiences in Iraq and definitely in Afghanistan teach us that if you survive it, you do endure. You do endure it. My problem is that I thought endurance was my superpower. And it was actually, because I was very talented at enduring things. The problem came not actually that long after Afghanistan, because I started to fall apart.
Yeah.
I had endured too much, and I started to fall apart in quite a big way. You know, it was really difficult, very difficult. 6 years of my life after post-Afghanistan, 6 years, I was desperately traumatized before I figured some stuff out. And what I realized is that endurance has value, right? I'm not here to deny that you shouldn't develop an ability to endure certain discomfort, certain scenarios. Of course, endurance has its skills, but it's a finite skill set. Yeah. It has its limits. And really what underlies our ability to endure is our ability to deny.
Yeah.
And so to endure physical pain, to endure heartbreak, there's an element of you have to deny the fact that it's happening. And that's what most people do. I was a master of that.
Yeah.
Most people do that. You know, we deny what we experience so that we can endure it and just keep going. It's a management tool. It's a management mechanism, right?
Yeah. It's a way of coping, isn't it, Keith? And
a coping mechanism. That's exactly it, right? But it's finite. Yeah. But it still has value.
Yeah.
But it's finite. And so I was in a place where I was a divorcee. I'd been to Iraq. Iraq was unpleasant, but not really that traumatic. It was Iraq. It was a hellhole.
Yeah.
Afghanistan was incredibly traumatizing, but very exciting. So I was conflicted.
Yeah.
The trauma of all of that led to the breakdown of another very significant relationship in my life. So I was grieving the deaths of friends, and I was grieving a relationship breakdown who I thought was the love of my life.
Yeah.
And I was denying all of it, and in an attempt to try and endure. Yeah. I was holding on very tightly to this, Keith, you have to endure because this is what you do. You're a big, tough man. You're a big paratrooper. You've been to war. You can endure this. But I was doing this all the time, you know. It's like holding on for dear life. Very tense. And that tension, that denial and that endurance, in the end, no one can maintain it. No one can.
No.
It's impossible.
Yeah.
And so it made me brittle.
Yeah.
And the more and more I tried to deny in an effort to endure, the more brittle I became. And then very quickly I started to shatter and fall apart. And so I'd reached the limits. I'd taken the limits of my personal endurance to its extreme end.
Yeah.
And I fell apart in a very big way. Everything fell apart. I was deeply depressed, anxious, traumatized, grieving, all sorts, and I hadn't done anything to deal with it. And then I began to practice certain skills like the internal arts, and I was helped by plant medicines, which we can talk about a little later if we have time.
Yeah.
And what I learned through a great deal of meditation, a great deal of practicing these arts like Tai Chi and Qigong and plant medicine, is that while endurance requires denial, genuine resilience, the ability to learn and grow from discomfort, trauma, pressure, stress, anything like this, what that requires is vulnerability.
Yeah.
And taking it further in its logical step, why should we be vulnerable, is because when we become vulnerable, we can become sensitive. And once we're sensitive to what's going on and how we feel, then we actually understand and can acknowledge what's happening. So I can acknowledge I was grieving. I can acknowledge I was heartbroken. I can acknowledge I'd suffered a great deal of terrible trauma with deaths of many friends.
Yeah.
So then I was like, oh, of course you're in a bad way because you experienced something terrible.
Yeah.
The more and more I became sensitive to my body and my emotions and my mind, the more I could work through it and heal myself, or have other people help me heal myself.
Yeah.
And so that's the umbrella sort of message, is that to be truly resilient, you need to be vulnerable in order to be sensitive. Yeah. And it's through your sensitivity that you're going to figure out all of your problems. Just more and more sensitivity, deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper.
Yeah. And it's so obviously such a story on what you went through. You've only just even touched on the kind of the very surface of it. And I suppose it's like we spoke about previously, and we both speak about in our work that a lot of the resilience that's promotive is suppressive resilience.
Mm-hmm.
The ability to suppress, to endure. And it's almost like literally hanging on to an object that's spinning. And the stronger your grip strength, the longer you can hold on for. Mm-hmm. That's like endurance. That's like the ability to, continue to hold on to this object that's spinning round. And just imagine it almost like a Ferris wheel, swirling you round and round. Those with this incredible grip strength, like you, who was in that kind of top 1% of endurance, had trained that way, had been, kind of chiseled into that mindset, you will hold on until the thing is going 200 miles an hour. The truth is, though, that at the end of the day, you're still a human. And when that grip strength finally runs off, you're still a fragile bag of bones that gets thrown against the ground much, much harder than those who are not able to endure to those speeds. And really, again, I really just want to go back into that period where, that fragility came to the surface. How did that kind of manifest in your life, and how did it actually feel when you reflect on it?
It was good question. That at times it was subtle.
Yeah.
So I remember, that's a good question. I remember at certain times it was very subtle. I was sat in a bar with my partner at the time, the one who our relationship eventually broke down because of this.
Yeah.
I was sat in a bar and seemingly having a nice time, a wonderful bar, wonderful surroundings. I was with the woman that I loved. And for no reason, I started crying. And I was a big, very big, muscular, big, tough war veteran, combat veteran of Iraq, of Afghanistan. And I'm sat in a bar and I'm just streaming tears. But nothing had happened. I just started crying, and I thought, that's not right.
Yeah.
That's not right, because nothing actually happened. So that was a kind of something is wrong.
Yeah.
So maybe that's not so subtle, actually, thinking about it. That's kind of that's less subtle than I imagined. But then also I feel, and this is where I think a lot of people might be I'm trying to be polite, misguided maybe, is that we deny the body and the importance the body has to. If we have let's say we have a mental health problem, everyone tries to fix the mind by using the mind, which unless you're very skilled at using your mind in particular ways, that's like you don't have a broken tool and then try and fix that broken tool with the broken tool. You use another tool to fix that tool.
Yeah.
And that's where the body can come in. Right? And so what I recognized was that my body was actually incredibly tense. I was like in a stress position all the time, in my sleep, all the time. And so I was sweating excessively because my body was literally being held tense.
Yeah.
And then because it was a gradual process of vulnerability and sensitivity, I was like, wait, well, I'm sweating a lot. And I know that I'm not mentally anxious. I wasn't mentally anxious. I was anxious about the sweating because it was embarrassing. But why was I sweating? And then I became vulnerable, became sensitive, realized that my body was incredibly tense and that I needed to relax my physical body.
Yeah.
So then my mind would also relax, because it's my belief that the mind and the body are one. Yeah. And that if we just start paying attention to our body, a lot of our answers will come. It takes time to develop that kind of skill, but a lot of the answers are held in the body, including things like trauma stored in the body. Yeah. So it's not necessarily always a question of things like psychotherapy. While that can be a valuable tool, people ignore the body. And even, I'm not talking about exercise here. Exercise is good and to be commended. Of course, go and do your exercises. Go and run, go and row, go and swim.
Yeah.
But those exercises, you're not vulnerable and you're not developing any form of sensitivity. Those exercises, and normally when the mind switches in, people go into an endurance cycle. Yeah? So they're like, oh, I can run further. I'm just going to run further. That's endurance, literally, which again has benefits. But at no point there are you being vulnerable in order to be sensitive to what your body is experiencing, because your body might actually need to stop running because it might be broken, like your knees or your back. Yeah. And if you're not listening, you're just going to keep running because you're enduring. So you break. So it takes quite specific practices, and that's why I teach them now, because I've practiced them for a good amount of time. I'm no master, but I do have some skill, and they're particular practices where they're very simple, but also very, very difficult, where you bring your awareness into your body in certain postures and certain exercises, and you're soaking your mind into your body, trying to find the tension of your body and then actively trying to watch it be released. Yeah. And I love that. That's been so rewarding. It's been transformative for me. Like I say, the internal arts, plant medicine, two together, an incredibly powerful healing tool. And so, that's why I do what I do, really, because it saved me. It saved me.
Yeah. And that's such a personal mission and a real kind of purposeful journey that's been, cultivated by you hitting that point. And, we've said it before, for a lot of individuals who are high performers, high endurance, high achieving, people who are over deliver, people who are constantly seen at that elite level, we've met many of them, and many of them are there because they've been willing to push the boundaries further and further. But in all truth, when you actually strip back that continuous improvement and that marginal gain mentality, they are starting to literally become like a porcelain human. And if anything significantly hits them, there's always the potential of that to shatter. And it's like that tension you alluded to. It just becomes to a point where they actually start to become rigid. And we see it both in business, we see it in sport, we see it in entertainment. The temptation is to keep lifting that heavy stone mask back up. And, I've spoken to people in the medical profession who have to do it after every patient, put it back on. War veterans who say literally, this happened and then I had to switch back into mode. And it gets increasingly tiring, constantly holding that rigid facade up. And what would be your advice? Because, we live in a world where we're constantly stimulated, we're constantly moving, we've got to grow, perform. And how do you help people to just take that step and think, actually, solitude, internal arts as a skill to build? You're not just going to turn up one day and be an enlightened master. And how does they really start to embrace that journey?
So first of all, I would never say to those people that need to use those masks professionally, because in the military, you have to do that. You have to, just because you experience trauma at the point of experience, doesn't mean that you can stop being a professional. So there's a need to put that back up and okay, that is desperately traumatic, but I still actually have a role to perform right now. So therapists, for instance, that's an excellent bit. But you do have to set that down and then spend time addressing the problems. So it's not like I'm not denying the importance of these abilities, but there has to come a time where you set that down, and ultimately personal resilience is an internal art. You can't read and learn about it. You can't watch a documentary about it. You can't even listen to me. And I present myself as some sort of expert on this. You have to practice it, and it's an internal art, which means that you need to develop it as a skill, and then you learn to express yourself through that skill. Therefore, it becomes art. But the body, for me, is just learn to pay attention to what's happening in your body. Find tension in your body. You will, if you just pay attention and be quiet and still and see what comes up. If I can help, obviously, please reach out and talk to me. But it's not enough to just run, swim, lift weights. It's not exercise. It's not a physical exercise, even though we use the body. Again, it's an internal art, and you have to take time. No one else, because it's internal, no one else can do it for you. Can't do it for you. In my position as a professional, I can show you how you can begin. And then you have to go away and do it on your own. There's nothing else for it. No one is going to do this for you. No one can do it for you. And why would you want anyone to do it for you when there's such a wonderful journey of unfolding and development? By going in, you develop and you unfold and you unpack and you grow and you expand by not shrinking, but by turning inwards. Would be my humble advice.
And that's so powerful, Keith, and that really just anchors in to the reason why this show exists, to really cultivate that curious self-awareness of how to become more self-aware internally and start to search these concepts, because we do, as human beings, we live in a world of comfort, and we also live in a world where we do look out to experts for advice. We do search the internet for answers, when really there are no answers for our inside, apart from the questions that we use to start to really understand ourselves and find ways to express that. And I think if anyone's going to take anything from this, it's think about resilience as an art. It's so often turned into a concept. There is science around it. There's a lot of interesting studies out there, but truth be told, it's not something that is, anti-expressive, like a lot of people try to push forward, that it's about suppressing, about not expressing, when actually resilience is all about expression and building a skill. So, again, Keith, that is an absolutely great way for people to kind of conceptualize and visualize how they can start to build that resilience and really start to see that sensitivity, just how powerful that can be, not only from a resilience perspective, but actually allowing them to embrace all the aspects of their lives and the experience of being a human. So what I want to know now, Keith, is what is coming in the future and how can people find out more about what you do?
What's coming in the future? More of the same with the resilience, and I hope that maybe I can touch more hearts and minds with this messaging. I believe it to be true and important. I've already spoken to a couple of police forces and presented to them and investment banks. After I left the military, I actually worked for JP Morgan in the city, which was another endurance
professional
teacher.
service.
Yeah. So I learned a lot from my time at JP Morgan. So we can learn this in the financial sector, and we can learn this in the government sector.
Yeah.
So I hope that I can do more of that, because I believe that I believe this to be true and really valuable and transformative for individuals and collectives.
Yeah.
But then really a lot of my attention right now is actually turned towards my work with our non-profit organisation, Heroic Hearts UK. And that's turned towards helping military and emergency services veterans gain legal access to psychedelic therapy. Legal access to psychedelic therapy. So in Peru and Costa Rica or the Netherlands, where these things are permitted. And it's been life-saving for me and many of the people involved in our team. And so we're all very, very passionate about our cause. We are the evidence that this is safe and effective. There's a big conversation that needs to be had at government level and at community level. But the science is sound. The anecdotal evidence for the positive effects of psychedelic therapy is overwhelming.
Yeah.
And I believe it could change and transform society entirely. And combined with the practices of the internal arts, maybe not at the same time, that would be difficult. But as a daily practice, having these internal arts, daily practice, and then we have this big therapeutic experience with psychedelic medicines, there's a lot of potential healing there, and I'm very excited to be able to play some small role in that, and so's the rest of the team. So that's what comes next.
Yeah, and I definitely feel that, from an evidential perspective, and it's very gradually gaining momentum. But ultimately the testimonies are there. The feedback is increasingly becoming prevalent, and obviously with societal aspects, there are always going to be barriers that need to be dismantled, obstacles that need to be overcome, and many objections due to how society has viewed certain substances. And ultimately the reality is that almost all medication has a plant medicine base. So it's all relative, and very much a case of how society views things rather than the more clinical aspects. Again, Keith, where can people find out more about Heroic Hearts and about yourself?
So Heroic Hearts, we're on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, not on LinkedIn as an organisation. The website is heroicheartsuk.com. And so if you're a veteran or an emergency services veteran and you feel that plant medicine could help you, please reach out. That's what we exist for. For me, professionally, if you'd like to learn more about resilience or other internal arts, then you can find me here on LinkedIn, or my website is keithjabraham.com. And I'm not on other social media channels, so it's just the website or LinkedIn for me.
Yep, super stuff. So I want to thank you for giving half an hour of your lunch today, Keith, and it's been an absolute pleasure to have you join me. A quick shout out to Bryn, who's been kind of really helping to shape that from an emergency services perspective, in terms of his experience. And again, it's really great to get that kind of interaction and that you're part of the overall discussion. But as we come towards the end of the show, thank you again to Keith. Thank you for you to tuning in. We'll be back again on Wednesday with another amazing guest, looking once again at resilience, but also looking at burnout, how that manifests and how we start to navigate that. So once again, thank you for joining us and have a lovely rest of the week.
Thank you.
And thank you, Keith.